I like the amount of selling too.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Good. Hey, how are you, huh?
Good. How's the family?
Good, very good.
You got grandkids yet?
One and one on the way.
Oh,
I've
one
got
and one in the oven.
I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter who's absolutely the world's best thing. I just love that girl to death. And then my daughter is due in January for number 2.
Christmas is the best at the age of 4.
Yes.
You spoil it hot and then you send them home.
Yes.
Okay, Cameron is going to be doing presentation during the audit certificate, so he's going to have that.
Thank you. Is there anything to sign?
So, I was gonna ask you, Julie, on the Python, is,
You need to go down,
yeah, but,
My cousin?
the 3 boys.
Oh,
Are 2 of them still in the military?
what's red?
Both of them?
maybe.
Both of them in the Navy.
Stoplight, right?
One of us.
Okay. I mean, I knew, and then DeAndre, he's still in high school, right? Or
Yeah,
still-
that's my understanding. I think he's a senior.
He's a senior this
Did you
year?
sign those already?
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's the only one I ever see is
He's the
him.
only one around. That's right. Yeah.
Is all of our technology ready to go? Are we live?
Got one.
Oh, we're good. We want to welcome the global audience this evening.
Big audience.
Checking in on the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency. This is our regularly scheduled meeting. It's December 11th, and we will ask our secretary to call the roll, please.
Porter,
Here.
Doty,
Here.
Warwick,
Here.
Moore. Mr. Moore on?
Nope.
Trying to call in.
Allgood,
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Is that you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh. Hit the button.
Oh, that's Dave.
Oh, it's Dave Moore.
Can't get on?
Probably not as brilliant as me.
Well, we're off to a rousing start.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. As always, is there a conflict of interest with anything on our agenda this evening for any of the commissioners? And seeing none, that will take us to special presentations. Any special presentations this evening? There's none on our agenda, so,
We do have one.
okay. Cameron, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Cameron Ariel. Been online with you all throughout this most recent URA feasibility study process, and have the opportunity now to present to you a little bit, just a quick update, and then hopefully some guidance and discussion around next steps with some of the URA going forward. The proposed district going forward. I have just a quick presentation that will kind of hopefully get us up to speed here real quick when you're ready. I'll skip through probably 3/4. If you need us to go back, we can. Let's go next slide. Probably start on slide 7 or so. Yeah, just a little bit about our firm if you need that. Okay, keep going. Some of our services, so we're focused here on the municipal finance side and the feasibility. Keep going. Some of the process, obviously we're looking at finance, but just to give you an idea of some of the other services that are available to the agency from our firm, as we are retained by you guys to provide these services. Okay, so wanted to just circle back. Since the last time we presented, there was some discussion about, what to do going forward, and the, different scenarios, particularly around should the Tillian property be included or not. We presented to you all the idea that if you took it out, next slide, it would produce the following scenario, which would produce about $17.7 million. Just some kind of high point takeaways there. There was some discussion, should we leave it in, should we not? Should we pull back? Should we look, kind of take a deeper dive into what makes sense for the agency to do in this downtown district? And then in particular, in light of the need for a parking structure, what would this district produce and help move forward there? So next slide. So just some options moving forward, just to kind of hopefully guide your thinking. Certainly open to any feedback or discussion here that can help us and staff aid you in your decision making. One is obviously to finalize the proposed plan that's before you. So it would generate that 17.7 million. Obviously, some big considerations there would be you'd be limited in your ability to do a large project or larger projects. The second point there is you would need to find potentially some additional revenue streams or partnerships to complete those larger projects. But you could do a good deal of the projects that were identified in the plan. And then the third bullet point I'll kind of focus on, since the Tillian project was kind of a decision point, because at this point this plan would be adopted in the next calendar year, the 2024 calendar year. That project is going to be baked into the base for this district, so the need to remove it from the district is essentially negated. That value would flow to the city as was or at least discussed in the last meeting. So kind of put a little bit finer point on that. We'll just call that the limited plan, or the plan that's before you. The second option is to take a harder look at the project area and potentially expand it for other needs that need to be accomplished, and also to generate additional value, the incremental value that could be used towards a larger project if that was so desired by the board. A third option is to maybe keep the limited plan and then look at additional plans, an additional area to focus on. And then, of course, the fourth option is to do a combination of those things, or an iteration of those things. The one thing I would note too now, given just where we are in the process, there's definitely not as much time pressure. So considering that we're moving into a new calendar year, the tax situation, tax valuation, tax of the properties in a proposed district will be what they will be, and there isn't that time pressure to make that decision, so to speak. So kind of with that, we'd love to kind of get your feedback on what we can help with, what you would like to take a look at. Certainly we can bring back different scenarios to aid you in that decision making. Ideally, that would be the process, so we could make sure what's being proposed, what you're looking to potentially approve is you're able to make that decision and not have to feel pressure or delay. I would just kind of a finer point on our engagement. So we are engaged with the agency to aid with all those services. We can go back to those if you'd like. But specifically to this scope of work, which is the feasibility study, we are committed to helping you accomplish that for this district that's being proposed. So use this as you need, and we're happy to be under what the cap is for our engagement there. So no worry about additional hours or charges. We want to make sure we get the agency to the finish line with this district. With that, I'll kind of pause and seek any feedback or answer any questions that you may have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Ariel?
I have some, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Doty?
First of all, Cameron, I have to say thanks for showing up in person, because I'm about to hit you with some questions that may be uncomfortable.
Sure.
And I appreciate you being here. I found 27 errors in your last proposal that you sent to City Council. That was me that was talking to you on YouTube. My frustration is, did you or your company charge us an extra $10,000 to look at that more quickly on a shorter timeline? Once someone reached out to you from the city and said, hey, we need this done faster, and I believe your company, or you, probably your company, said it'll be an extra $10,000 to look at that more quickly. Is that true or not true?
Mr. Chair and Board Member Doughty, I'm not quite sure what you're referencing. So is it a...
Give me a second then. Ray Lynn, do you know what I'm referencing? Would you mind speaking on it? No? We have got to get these microphones right, folks. This is crazy. We bought new microphones and they don't work.
Do you want to come up here, Raylan, or whatever is easiest?
They've never worked, I don't think. Just throw them in the garbage and start over.
So I believe what Commissioner Doty is talking about is when myself and Cameron and Jace were kind of negotiating back and forth to get the timeline designed before the original proposed timeline was in October when Clearwater was going to, and when I pushed back on the requested timeline by Doug, the fee went from $25,000 to $35,000.
So it did increase by $10,000.
Yes.
And then, Mr. Cameron, your comment was something close to this. Normally, you have time to review these things. So if we paid your company an extra $10,000 to review it more quickly, why did you accept the contract of more than $10,000 additional dollars but didn't have time to review those properly?
So appreciate that additional clarity. Yeah, so back to the point, and thank you for the additional information. So yes, we did increase our normal fee, given that it was going to be a very quick timeline, a quick turnaround.
Report had 27 errors in it.
So just addressing, so to your first point, that's the reason. And if you think about that, we have to reallocate resources. We have other projects going on, and so in order to deliver what you were asking us to do, we needed to do that in order to get there.
But by your own comment, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Go
But by your own comment, you said normally you have time, something similar to this, to review these things. We paid you $10,000 extra to find the time to review these more quickly. If you didn't have the time, you should have said, we don't have the time, no matter the amount of money you're willing to pay. I don't have the time to review those things. So the report you generated for us was garbage, in my opinion. 27 errors, and your company wants $10,000 more to review that more quickly, and now you're here tonight to come back, and really, I don't even know what you've said tonight, to be quite honest, in your presentation. I've gotten nothing from this, and your company still wants $10,000 more to produce that garbage report. And of course, they sent you to speak to us. And like I said before, I appreciate you being here. I told you this wasn't going to be easy. But we paid you $10,000 more to produce a good report, right? And by your own admission on YouTube, is you said normally you have time to review these things. I caught the error. I gave it to Ray Lynn, which then gave it to your company, and you caught 2 errors based off that information. Your company did not catch the errors. We caught the errors. But we paid you $10,000 more to produce a report more quickly. In my opinion, you just throw a report together, charged us $10,000 more and produced a garbage report, and now we sit here today, you say, well, but we're not gonna charge any more. But we paid you $10,000 more to drop what you were doing, to focus on what we're doing, which is the $10,000, correct? Would we pay you more money if you didn't have time to rush the report?
So, Mr. Chair and Board Member Doty, appreciate your commentary. I'd happy to talk through any errors that exist. We did talk through two. The two that
find them. We found them.
The two that were in question, I don't know the 27. I'd love to see them. Anything that we can receive, any feedback we can get from you, we'd love to see it. And if it helps us
Everything that
improve,
was tax exempt that you guys had included in the report that said it was going to generate money, and we found that they're all tax exempt.
Okay, so with that, yeah, there's two errors. Granted, if you lump them, if you count each individually, the tax exempt properties included, I guess it could add up to 27. I don't know exactly that number, but the two errors that were identified were that the base values were included in the proposed new district. That was something that we caught. And then the second, Ray Lynn did let us know about the tax exempt properties. On that one, just so you know why that occurred, if you go onto the Canyon County website under the assessor's office, it does include the values. So unfortunately, we included the values even though they were tax exempt. And so that's why that showed up. And we fully admit those errors and apologize for them. And, obviously want to help the district make this right. To your point, though, I mean, I think this is what you're getting at, is why are we paying you additional money for a report that had errors in it? Is that fair? Or?
Fair. Mr. Doty?
That's some of it. I
Okay.
just get so frustrated. We're trusting experts, and we don't have it, so we hire an outside company. It's not just you. It's my frustration citywide, urban renewal-wide.
Yep.
We trust you, so we authorize all these thousands of dollars, and we're getting crap reports. It's not just from you, it's from everyone. And all that happens is there's an apology.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to me, and I'm here for the taxpayer. I'm not here for you.
Yep.
Right? I'm here for me and every taxpayer up here, every taxpayer in this room. That's my job. That's what I was elected on, is to protect their money and be a good steward of their money. And I hate paying more money for a substandard report when the first report was crap to begin with too, and now we paid you more money to produce a report in a quicker time, instead of people just being honest and say, that can't happen. We can't get you a good report early, but if you pay us $10,000, we'll produce one though. And that's good. And that may be my perception and not what you're probably going to say. And I get that, but it shouldn't come with any errors. We trust you by paying you $30,000 or $40,000 to go. Don't just say the county said that these were good. We trust you as the professional to check that for us. If we have to check it ourselves, then we don't need you to check it. And not you personally.
Yeah.
We don't need to hire all these companies then and spend $40,000, $50,000 at a whack at taxpayers' expense if we're not getting a report that's any good. So my frustration is still, will you stand here today and alleviate us from that $10,000 for going fast because the report was inaccurate?
Mr. Chair and Mr. Doty, yeah, I appreciate this dialogue, because it's, obviously you're frustrated, and I can't speak to other contractors that you work with and
I'm talking just about you. Will you relieve us of the $10,000 we paid you?
I can certainly speak to our part in this, and yes, we fully acknowledge the two errors that were made and the consequence in that. We do see that, though, that when we did report to you, it was accurate. I would say that
submitted two errors, but now you're saying it was an accurate report.
Yes. So when the previous slide, when we reported to you those numbers were inclusive of the errors. In other words, we had addressed those errors, and the numbers that were in that were the accurate ones.
So you're not willing to relieve the $10,000?
If that's a huge impediment, I think our company is willing to work with you, and we understand that's frustrating. And
I would never hire your company again, to be quite honest.
yeah, I fully understand that. So,
I think I made
if
my
that's-
point, Mr.
If
Chair.
that's an ask, we're willing to work with the agency on that.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions for him. I do have some discussion on this. but
Okay.
I don't have any
All
questions
right.
for him in particular.
No other questions? Okay, thanks.
Okay?
So, on this downtown urban renewal area, information doesn't seem to get to the end of the row a lot of the time. Are we still considering a downtown urban renewal area? Is that in the works?
No idea myself.
Well, we're the commission, that's why I'm asking.
There is a proposal.
I believe that's the intent. I haven't heard an official word. Mr. Hilty, do you mind speaking to that? Perhaps Stephen could as well.
That's kind of where I'm going, is where the commission would be kind of,
Make that determination.
yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. There always is when we're proposing new areas, we're mindful of the end of the calendar year because it's relevant to setting the base assessment role. We're not able, of course, at this point to get one done in 2023. But I can tell you from the discussions that we've had with the department heads on the economic development team, there's real need for a new area that includes downtown. We're going to wind up with some spaces that are not developed. Those will be transferred to the city as part of the closing out of those projects. But they really need to be the subject, we think, of RFPs under the urban renewal process, so that we can kind of solicit the kind of development that is going to enhance the downtown. Whereas, I think you're all aware, the city simply auctions off property to the highest bidder, and it can be used for nothing. It could be used for whatever's consistent with zoning. And the work, of downtown revitalization is not complete. So I think staff would tell you that we'd like to see and propose another downtown area. I think the upshot of what we learned from Clearwater, despite the errors, was that what we had proposed was probably not feasible. And we need to take another look at how we're going to fund a parking structure. And we probably need to take another look at the footprint. There's been communications with city staff about extending this toward the Canyon County campus for some projects and street improvements over there, and then even further east, out along Chicago and out to 21st. There's a lot of undeveloped industrial type properties in there that are going to wind up probably within the horizon of a new urban renewal area being redevelopable. I don't have a proposal for you now, but I think what I could tell you is that staff's position would be, I think, it'd be wise to consider a new area that includes downtown. It may be different from the one that we were pursuing this fall. But there is some momentum toward that. There's certainly continuing momentum for development downtown and in the area surrounding downtown. And that I think, staff would want the instruction from you to bring something back early in 2024. That is different. We will need feasibility study services from Clearwater or somebody else. And I think the proposal before you was to work on that new area with new feasibility numbers. I don't know whether that's palatable or not, but that is something we're going to need from them or somebody else. But I think in terms of establishing projects and cost estimates and boundaries, we've got some ideas that are being kicked around. So the answer to the question, sort of where are we, is I think what we had proposed this fall to be completed this fall, that is dead in the water. But I think the idea of having continuing incentives for downtown redevelopment and the continuing control of choosing developers and projects is going to be something that the team would certainly like to see. So I certainly stand for questions. I guess just as staff and Stephen can correct me if he thinks I'm wrong. The discussion that'd be good tonight, or even, into the January meeting is instruct us to do this and to bring forward a plan and get something developed that carries forward at least the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish, this fall.
My frustration level was high, and not, again, just like Commissioner Doty, not you specifically, but we just got handed, this is what it is, say yes or no. Didn't have any input or guidance. I had given input to the mayor. The area was too small. Back when I talked to the mayor, it was too small, and the plan was too big. $17 million is a lot of money. If we increase the area a little bit and made our focus, instead of on a parking structure, on more surface street parking around the city, it would be a lot more affordable. But I would just really appreciate more input before the final, we're having discussion here, whether we're, I don't think there's anybody that says, no, we don't need to finish what we started downtown. I think that's pretty common. But for me, as a urban renewal commissioner, I would certainly like to have more input than say yes or no.
Mr. Doty?
I'd like to add. So the same thing for me, Commissioner Allgood made, is first, I think this board commission needs to decide if it is going towards the parking structure. I don't know who made that determination that this new urban renewal and all the money needs to go to the parking structure. It wasn't this board that decided that. So whoever decided that and thinks that's the direction it's going, they don't sit on this board. This board has never said that's where the money's going. I'm not saying that isn't where this board will decide it to go, but we don't. It's kind of being crammed down our throats that this new urban renewal will go to a new parking structure. This board has never said that in a collective vote that I'm aware of.
No.
And maybe this board doesn't want it to go there. Maybe that needs to go out to bond, or maybe some of the money does need to go there. So whoever decided that, and I think that's the frustration of this whole board, is someone is deciding something off in the weeds somewhere that we don't know anything about. Then it comes in here and we get hit with it, and this board hasn't decided or given any input that we're aware of where that money's going. So this board hasn't decided that, one, there will be a new urban renewal district, two, that money will be devoted to a new parking structure. Now, if that's where the mayor wants to go, then that's his fault for not educating us and leading us and guiding us where he wants us to go with this. And I think that's I don't want to speak for Commissioner Allgood, but I'm certainly sharing with him some of what he's saying tonight is, who's leading this? It's not. It's this board that should be leading. Do we want another one? Which I think most of us may agree with. Again, I don't want to speak for all because we've never really asked anyone on this board if they want a new one. And two, where should that money go? And maybe it should be divided. Maybe it should be only towards curb, gutter, and sidewalk, streets. Maybe it should be all towards a parking garage. But I think that's the frustration of the board, is no one's asked us where we want the money to go or where we think it should go, and we're the board that's put together to decide that.
Other comment?
You guys are all looking at me. Mr. Chairman.
Looking at all of you.
Mr. Chairman.
If you have a comment.
Ms. Warwick?
I know we were asked for some input at the outset, and we talked about curb and gutter improvements, blighted area improvements like we have over here on the other side of the railroad tracks, those sorts of things. I heard parking structure kind of batted around, but it sounds like now kind of what the focus is we want all of this money to go there. And I guess that was never our intent, because we saw a proposition that was all sorts of different places within the city that needed improvements, which is great, and the total purpose of an urban renewal area. And I'm totally in favor of a new urban renewal area, but I'm not totally in favor of deciding this early, when we don't even have it yet, that, okay, all that money is going to go to a parking structure when there are so many more immediate needs downtown. And I think the parking structure discussion should come much later, once we see how much money we have left after we've made these improvements, my opinion.
My turn?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I think I'm in agreement with everybody. I think, the bigger part obviously is, the purpose of the urban renewal is to attract development to this area. And I think a big part of that is to get input from staff, to kind of see where they see the need. Obviously, their ears to the ground and listening to those that are wanting to come into town and see where they want to go. Obviously, we also want to review kind of where the growth is going in downtown. I'm still new to this board, and still trying to get understanding of what's behind that. But I'm in agreement with everybody. Obviously, we need to have some input in where this money goes. But we do see a need for a parking garage. But not necessarily all the money needs to go to that. I think there's ways to do that as far as getting grants, matching, find a developer who's willing to partner. There's several ways to do that. But for the most part, I think, there's a lot of exploring to do before we make any decisions. But I think staff have a big role in that as well, and kind of getting us some information, to at least make a educated decision. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth there.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, are you still back there? There you are. Did you have any comments that you wanted to make, Steve?
Not until you called his name.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mark, as always, eloquently states everything that I have floating around my brain, so he put it in perfect form. Really, the goal for us is to continue the growth that we've experienced downtown, and just to make sure that everything is neat and tidy and presentable for folks that want to come in. We want to continue to be a destination in this valley. We believe we can become that. And of course, this district is very important to helping us accomplish those goals. So, Commissioner Warwick, you mentioned curb, gutter, sidewalk, and that parking study revealed some of the inconsistencies we have with the improvements downtown. And I think that, of course, we can make sure to keep it more consistent and keep our synergies more consistent throughout the downtown core, not just one area, not just around the plaza, but of course down Fifth, all throughout Maine, all the corridors that are important to us for downtown. So again, I think it's important that we can do that. Also, as far as feedback is concerned, I'm more than happy to provide input on the process and how it all came about. I know that Rob and I spent a significant amount of time just throwing out projects that we felt could be helpful in accomplishing in this new district at the outset, and just presenting that to the commissioners here. Of course, we just had that one meeting, but if it is desirable to have more meetings and more input and more opportunities for that to occur, happy to provide that. Our thing is making sure that we think of anything and everything that could be applicable to this plan, because if it's not in the plan, then we can't do it at all. So urban renewal is designed as such legally that you have to just put anything that you can conceptually imagine that could potentially take place with the proceeds for the district. So we put in anything and everything that we felt could be accomplished through this plan.
Questions for Steve?
So Mr. Jenkins, not really a question, but I think the point, at least for me, is I'm going to be far less apt to bless off on any new plan that didn't start here instead of starting somewhere else and try to end here. If we're going to have a plan for downtown, I think it should start in this room, and the plans discussions start here, rather than at the end of the day, we just get told this is a plan, you need to say yes or no. I think that's bit us too many times. So as we move forward, I think you see from the group that we're all very much interested in finishing what we started. But I think we need to start here.
Any other questions for Steve?
I'll just concur with, what's our title tonight, Commissioner? All good.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
I would suspect that some of the discussion and some of the angst that we're feeling tonight were mirrored about 25 years ago when the first plan came into being. Some of the same questions. Where did this project come from and why are we doing it? And I can foresee probably a few more workshops in our future as we intend to work more closely with staff.
Perfect.
If they have an idea, let's make sure that everybody's on the same page, so staff doesn't feel abused and we don't feel like we're being overlooked. And everybody's opinion matters.
Just for the record, I
in this
love
process.
Steve Jenkins. Well, it may hit him hard sometimes.
Debbie, would you put that in the notes, please, for
You
tonight?
most certainly can.
Commissioner Jim, can I say something?
You sure may, Dave. Thank you.
First, I've never known that this new URA proposal was, any part of that was going to go to a parking garage. I did bring it to a meeting, and we spoke about going under the 10th Street exit there, where the walkway where we can go over to 11th, and maybe go on a couple blocks towards the library and then back up towards the freeway with a proposed URA site. That was the only thing that I've really agreed upon. And then seeing this and asking what I thought about it, I thought it was too large. So that's my 2 cents of what I've known. Getting back to this new proposed URA, I think with the amount of information that's been presented to us in a number of ways, I think it's too premature. And I also feel that the Clearwater Analytical, that vendor report that we received, completely disappointed that something like that would be let go by that company into us, into our hands, signed off on, reviewed on by that company, and then a rush fee put on that as well. So I would move that we would find another company just to go back over this with. So that would be my proposal. That's all I have, Commissioner Jim.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Mr. Ariel, for being here. Sorry it wasn't a more pleasant experience, but we appreciate the presentation, and we're going to move on with our agenda at this point. Brings us to public comments, where members of the public can address areas and items of concern of the commission, things that aren't on the agenda. Are there any? Not seeing any. That takes us to the consent calendar. Do we have a motion as to its disposition?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent calendar as written.
Thank you, Mr. Allgood. We have a motion by Mr. Allgood, second by Mr. Doty. Any comments or questions? Would the secretary call the roll, please?
Allgood,
Yes.
Garcia,
Yes.
Porter,
Yes.
Doty,
Yes.
Warwick,
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Very good. Takes us to our first item of old business. It's an action item. To consider resolution approving the replacement of attachment 9 to the disposition and development agreement with TS Development. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a relatively simple and straightforward item. What happened was last month you approved the disposition development agreement with TS Development. I had received late, but before the meeting certainly, a request to modify attachment 9. And just to put it in context, as you know, TS Development DDA has to do with the 510 Arthur Street project that's kitty corner from where we're meeting. That includes the Arthur Street right-of-way. The developer wants to develop that right-of-way all the way out to essentially the bridge on 6th Street. And as we have negotiated with them, that would be property transferred to that developer, but it would have to be developed by the developer consistent with the plaza theme, and then generally open to the public. And so there were some strings that were going to be attached to that at the time it's vacated by the city. Attachment 9 was to set forth in general terms what those restrictions would be. What came late was a request to revise that. I apologize that I didn't get that. I apologize to you that I didn't get it before you timely. I apologize to the developer. I didn't see the email timely. When it came to my attention, I asked them, look, this is not strictly contractual language. These are bullet points that need to be folded into an agreement. Can we just prepare the agreement, see if we can iron out any differences? The response was they felt more comfortable with a different attachment 9. I've compared the two documents. I think the changes are clarifications in nature. They are minor in nature. I don't think that they are leading us at all in a different direction. We're still going to have to work out and negotiate the formal restrictive covenant that'll be recorded at the time that the property is vacated for the project. So my recommendation is simply that you approve replacing the attachment 9 that was attached to the resolution tonight in favor of the one that was approved at the last meeting. I'll stand for questions.
Questions for Mr. Hilty?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
I understand, Mr. Hilty, you think they're minor in nature, then why did they need to submit the report? They must think they're not minor in nature and want to make sure it's very clear on the record.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I did get an email from their attorney. They think that they are clarifications.
Then I would prefer to see the attorney here explaining why he needs to send that versus you fighting for them to get the, we calling it amendment, what are we calling it?
Yeah.
Attachment 9.
Attachment 9, why aren't they here explaining? My concern is you think they're minor, but they thought they were big enough to send to you in an email to get your attention, and that concerns me. It sends up my antenna that maybe they don't think they're so minor, but they're not here to ask.
Mr. Chairman,
Mhm.
Mr. Doty, they're not. We certainly could go through them. You know, there, I think, are 5 or 6 the conditions, and so we could go over tonight what the changes are, if that would be
The
helpful.
changes are in your opinion or in their opinion?
The actual textual changes.
These.
I've read them. My concern is that we think they're minor, but yet they wanted to bring it to our attention enough.
True.
So that concerns me, because we don't know, because they're in their generalities, right?
They are.
So what are they thinking differently than what they very well detailed to us previously? But yet they haven't shared with you what those might be, right? Other than the generality email.
They shared
Yes,
the language.
Not
Yes.
not you, Mr. Hilton. I'm just concerned that
Understand.
I don't know why they need to send a clarification, because we don't know what they're thinking compared to what they sent previously.
Well, in fairness, just so you know the history, and I want to own my part of this, I prepared the original attachment 9, sent it to them for review. He had emailed back some tweaks, right? Now, maybe they're more
Okay.
substantive than that. In my reading, they were tweaks. I didn't see it. And so when I came to the meeting, we approved the attachment 9 that I had sent them, that they had asked for these language changes on that I didn't see in my inbox
Okay.
before the meeting. So I want to make sure that they weren't changing what they had done. They were changing my first cut at the draft to clarify some things.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Hilty, none of these changes change the intent of the draft that you presented first?
I think this is an email I got from Sean Maven, the attorney for the developer. This was the one that I had missed. And so let me just read it for you, and I should have included it in the packet, my apologies. He writes to me, I updated attachment 9. We have some fine tuning to do with the final conditions before recording and execution, so I want to make the attachment 9 conditions a little less encumbering. Number 1, we don't, and this has to do with the rights of the church to have access around the front, which would be through this plaza area that we're requiring them to build. We do not have a final agreement with the church. They may be unreasonable or overly reasonable on that, on what they will agree to. I do not want this agreement to be inconsistent with the spirit of mutual agreement. In other words, I think what he's saying is I don't want the church to have a veto power over what happens on that plaza. And that was certainly, from my perspective, what we wanted was for the church to be, when they were approached about the vacating of the right-of-way immediately in front of their building, they said, we may still want to have some vehicular access periodically. That was okay with, I think, everybody. But I think in the comment that prompted changes there was simply, we don't want them to have control over what happens on the plaza entirely. That we'll work with them toward that end.
Mr. Hilty?
Yes.
I'm sorry. We have an attachment 9 in our packet. Is it the previous version or is it the newest version?
The new one.
Newest version, okay.
Correct.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Hilty, so is number 1 the only part that changed?
No,
Okay.
no. Number 2 changed, and I'll paraphrase the email here to get through it. They wanted to clarify that the property, that it will be private property, it will not be public property. So they made some changes to indicate clearly that it was going to be private property. That is consistent with what has always been intended. Number 3, he writes, I just added the word, quote, reasonably. Number 4, this is fine. and the intent is fine. Developer wants the right but not the obligation to maintain the sidewalk by the creek in case the city fails to keep the sidewalk as nice as possible. That has to do with maintenance obligations. And there is a portion of this that will remain right of way. Underground improvements, so the 5 had to do with improvements. He writes, underground improvements, though I cannot think of any right now, would be out of sight and should not have to go through additional public approval process. What that condition, and again, this is in concept, it'll be fleshed out in the ultimate agreement, but it basically says you're going to have to build what you said you're going to build, and then if you want to change it, you're going to have to get approval. And I think what he's trying to do is find some space that, look, if they want to replace a park bench or a planter, you know, they may not have to get approval for everything that they do. And we tried to accommodate that language. Frankly, think that his language didn't change it that much. And he did basically refer to underground, right? So if they build something underground, they wouldn't have to get city approval, but the contract does say, the conditions do say, look, if you have to get a permit for that, which oftentimes you do for underground improvements, they would have to go through the city to get the permit. And I think 6 had to do again with making sure that it was public property, not private property.
Private property.
So I maybe said it backwards. It will be private property, not public property. And
But it's public most of the time.
Yeah, the concern there had to do with, you know, excluding people who are causing problems there, that they would have private property rights to do that, as opposed to, you know, the city, who sometimes is limited in controlling access to public space. So again, your comments are well taken, Commissioner Doty. I think that really this is going to be fleshed out in the agreement, and it didn't seem like these changes were substantive to me. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, I guess, to my attorney report. They're moving forward, and they reached out to me affirmatively, wanting to know how and when they could submit their proof of evidence of financing, which is their obligation to do. They're apparently ready to do that. They have concerns about some of the information becoming public, and that's a legitimate concern. We're working through how to get that reviewed. Frankly, my plan is to work with Chairman Porter and probably Commissioner Moore on reviewing and approving that evidence of financing, because I know it falls within his wheelhouse.
Yep.
But I think it's a developer that's been pretty straight up, and they're wanting to move forward.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Doty?
Just a comment to add, though, and this is where I support Commissioner Moore, not just on this topic, but others, but this is where we would like to hear from the people involved, right? Instead of our attorney coming up and excuse me, defending them. It'd really be nice if we're going to talk about them, that they send a representative to talk, instead of us trusting. I'm not saying we don't trust you, Mr. Hilty, so I want to be careful with that. But we get what you're saying, but we haven't heard it come out of their mouth. And I think that's a concern, is it doesn't mean it wouldn't fly right through and we wouldn't approve it, but it'd really be nice to get them on the record saying what they mean exactly. Because you're saying what you think they mean. And that gives them wiggle room to get out of it later, because they haven't said on the record what they mean. And I support Commissioner Moore when he argues that point, that they should come in and talk with us. If they want to change different than what they originally proposed, then come in and stand before us, like poor Cameron did tonight, and stand before us and take the lumps and tell us. It's very hard to, this is a poor choice of words, fight our own, so to speak. You're on our side is what we think. So we can't throw snowballs at you. You're on our side, and it'd be nice to hear from these people when they propose something, when we approve what they propose. Now they want to change. Come in and talk to the commission then, instead of sending our own attorney to fight for them for the change. I think.
Yeah, get it.
Chris, did you have a question?
I did, Mark. I'm a little concerned about this public property, private property designation. Would there be a new property description with boundary lines drawn and all that a legal description in place that would define that?
Yes.
The sidewalk is public property, step off the sidewalk is private property kind of situation?
Yes. There is a legal description it's been done. It was in the DDA that was approved at the last meeting.
And it would include the whole length of Arthur to Sixth Street as we're discussing here?
Yes, there is, so that is gonna have to be vacated by the city. Everybody understands that is a condition for this to go forward, because it is public right-of-way. That requires a hearing and an ordinance, and that's where this agreement about the limitations on the use of it would be imposed. Part of the delay in this was having to coordinate design elements at that intersection of Arthur and Sixth, and where exactly that line was going to be, because it needed to accommodate this plaza area that will be developed by TS Development, but also the ongoing use of Sixth Street and, a space in there for cars to turn around and stuff.
Yeah, and then that was one of my, Mr. Chair, one of my concerns. So the end of Sixth Street, where it connects to Arthur, they're talking about the piazza going all that direction. Is that a drivable surface that the church would be able to access? I mean, it's not planters and things, it's an actual drivable surface. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's condition 1 in attachment 9, is that they're going to have to be accommodated there, at least for now. Now, it may not extend beyond this current property owner, current user, but for now, that would be part of the accommodation.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Mark.
I think Mr. Commissioner Doty's point is well made here.
Mm-hmm. So, Mark, as we take action on this evening, there will still be another review of this after these updates are made. Is that correct? Or is this the final presentation for this?
This would be the final attachment 9, unless it was modified again in the future by some action of the agency. But these are not intended in the DDA to be final terms.
Mm-hmm.
They're just guiding the preparation of a restrictive covenant document. And so,
one final clarification, Mr. Chair. With the church, they don't want the church to have veto power, but I'm worried that they'll come in and just do whatever they want and then cut the church off. We don't want that to happen. So what do we have in place to ensure at least the church has a voice, which I think is kind of where you were going, Commissioner Allgood, is, they don't have veto power, but we also don't want to change this, it's all private property, and now they can just cut the church off, because one, we granted them the church doesn't get veto power, and we granted you get private property rights power. Where does that cross? So without something in place?
Certainly, there will be something in place. And so the condition 1 on attachment 9 does deal with the church, and it does say that they will get, periodic access across this plaza so that they can drive from 6th Street over to the current parking lot access they have on 6th. Where exactly that is located, how it's designed, whether it's blocked off with bollards, when it's open, right? Clearly Sunday, but certain hours on Sunday. Those kind of details are going to have to be worked out. And I think what the developer is saying is, if we want to be giving the church access sometimes, that's fine. But if the church turns around and says, we want access 24/7, which is not what they were told, what they said when they were told, and they certainly don't need that for their use. Sure. They still have access from 6th Street. They have access from the alley. They just don't want to run into a situation where the church is unreasonable. And that was not the intent.
I don't want to run into a situation where
exactly.
Property is unreasonable either.
Neither one of them. Neither the church nor the developer are driving the bus here. The city council will vacate that right of way with conditions acceptable to the city council.
Okay.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right.
It's an action item.
Yeah, it is an action item. Do we have a, motion, in regard to this resolution?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
I'm going to trust Mr. Hilty. So in the future, I'd really like to hear from the people that make the changes and not our own council. I guess that we would approve the replacement of attachment 9 to the disposition and development agreement with TS Development LLC as included in the packet's the most current, right?
Yes. Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Ms. Warwick. Any further discussion? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Albin?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Almost voted no against myself on that one. I just want you to know.
That'd be weird.
I've done some weird stuff.
Takes us to our first item of new business, and that's a public hearing. And we have Ray Lynn to bring us all the good news pertaining to amendments to the budget for 2024. Good evening.
Good evening. How's it going? So what I have before you is a budget amendment, increasing the revenue or the expenditures, for the, budget, which, Debbie, I'm looking at this, and I don't know if we published the correct document. This is the original budget document, but we increased expenditures by $5,628,619. Did I give you the wrong?
So I would publish what you.
We might have to republish this, and I apologize.
Thanks for noticing.
So,
Do we need a motion to continue it, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I apologize.
Things happen.
Things happen.
Catching my ear.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we, do we need to make it a date certain, Debbie?
Yeah, it'll be your next meeting.
Okay, so that the amendments to fiscal year 2024 Urban Renewal Agency budget be postponed until a date certain of? Okay.
15? 15 or 16?
Eight, the eighth.
The date certain of January 8, 2024, the regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Garcia. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Do I need to close this public hearing? That almost didn't happen. It didn't really happen,
Open
did it?
until the next meeting, right?
Okay, all right.
Just continue it
Okay.
to the next.
Well, that kind of precludes the second item, second action item of approving the resolution. So, Ray Lynn, don't go away. You're still there. We need to consider invoices for payment
Okay.
from the treasurer.
See, everybody makes errors. I apologize.
Okay.
We all do.
We all do it.
So for invoices this month, it's pretty small because the budget amendment is not in place, so we can't pay any East
Yeah, exactly.
Urban area invoices. So for this month, we have two. We have the $18,900 for the economic development contributions and $6,435 for the November attorney services for a total of $25,335.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
I'll make a motion that we approve the invoices for payment from Urban Renewal Agency in those amounts.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Doty and a second by Ms. Warwick. Would the secretary call the roll?
Doty?
Yes.
Warwick?
Yes.
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 Garcia?
Yes.
Porter?
Brings us to our treasurer's report.
And I actually have a handout that wasn't in your packet, so I will email this to you, Mr. Moore. I apologize because I didn't want any confusion in your packet.
Thank you, Raylan.
Thank you.
Feels like the good paper.
So first I'll go over the bank statement or the bank reconciliation. And as you can see, we have a total of, $8,070,000 or $8,070,159.50, for total in there. You can see our interest to payment, $11,846.89 with no tax deposits. They actually posted in December, so that's why didn't receive it until December 1st, so.
Raylene, I'm not seeing that number. Where's that number on here?
That 8,077,000?
It's in the gray box, so scroll down, Noah.
Oh,
In the yellow box, there we go.
There we go.
Right there, all the way down at the bottom. 8 million includes both what we have in Banner Bank and LGIP for the long-term investments.
you confused me. I was looking here.
And so, speaking of what I handed out, okay, so we have the new financial update that I'm providing you, and then what I handed out. And so the difference between the two is in 2023, as you know, we sold a piece of property for just over $7 million. And we put that in the East Urban account instead of in operating. And what I wanted to do is reclassify that from East Urban to the operating account. That will not change our budgeting, but what it does show, if you look at the second worksheet that I provided you, it does show that if we were to reclass it, that almost all of our increment funds have been used. So it's a little bit more of a transparency side, because as you know, increment funds have a specific use and they have a specific deadline of when they need to be used, where land sale, not as tight on the specific use. And so, I wanted to show you this before I actually did it. It doesn't affect our financial statements. It just is on this financial overview that I will be providing you. And so before I did it, I wanted to show you the differences, because pretty drastic in the accounts on how it changes. So you can see that, for East, it goes from the $6 million, just over $6 million to $46,000. So, and then the operating, increases from $496,000 to over $6 million. So there's a transfer. So if you guys are okay with doing that, you know, I talked to our attorney, I talked to our auditors. Both of them did not have any issues with me doing this. There's no restatement on our financial statements, like I said. There's just a tracking of our cash in the different buckets of the operating, the increment funds, and the LGIP, so.
Mr. Chair, so are you saying this just gives us a little more latitude on how we spend that money?
That is correct.
Okay, we have more control over what we can do with it.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And if I may,
Mr. August, yeah.
Mr. Hilty is blessed off on, because it's a land sale, we can use it for continuing urban renewal business without it being tied directly to East Urban Renewal?
Yes,
Nice.
Was this your idea?
this was my idea.
All right.
Thank you.
She was a bit higher.
Give that girl.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah.
We can sleep better.
So I will, put those on any forthcoming, statements then, so you will see those, different buckets. I also, in this, I did find a correction on the north, and so you will see there was one project that was coded to east that is not actually an expense to east, it was actually a north expense, so that cash did drop as well, so, in my audit of this, so, things you find.
Very good. Any questions? Okay, do we have a motion as to the disposition of the monthly cash reconciliation report?
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
do we
Doty?
just approve it? Does that automatically, or do I need to include that in my motion, Mr. Hilty, just approve it the way it's presented?
Correct.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the monthly cash reconciliation report.
Okay, very good. Do we have a second? A second. We have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Ms. Warwick. Any other discussion? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty,
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Ogden,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter.
Yes. And now our project list.
Our project list. So, we do have quite a few projects that are, closed, as you can see, and we have, a couple more that will be closing, that we received invoices for. In addition, what you will see, come next month after the budget amendment, we have, 21st Avenue parking lot is over budget. The costs are coming over budget. And so, you'll see a request from me to move a little bit more funds into that account or that project. And then the Centennial Boulevard median project is also, over that project budget. And so those two, I will be requesting to, move some funds around from the current budgets. I'll work with our Public Works Director to see where other projects that are coming in either under budget or, we'll look to reduce some USIC funds, one or the other, so.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Doty?
So we canceled a project that was over $3 million to make sure that all these other projects came in good. Are we still good on that?
We are. The majority of that did go to USIC, and that's why I feel like it probably some of that will come from the USIC budget, so.
Don't need to cancel another project?
No.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. We don't need to cancel another project, in your opinion, to make sure that all these come in
No,
within the money?
no.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the project list? Very good. Thanks, Raylene. Brings us to our economic development activity reports. Mr. Jenkins goes first.
He trades one for one, I notice. He's
Mhm.
starting to bring the oldest one.
Yeah.
Chair, Commissioners, this is convenient. I didn't realize it was going to be available up here on the screen, so thank you so much. Really appreciate that. It eliminates the need to read the small print on my cell phone here, so appreciate that. All right, so North Ranch, 115 acres. I remember we annexed that property into the city in October of 2020, and to have that 115 acres fully developed up to this point is pretty remarkable in terms of the timeline in which that's occurred. The last 10 acres will be used for a storage facility there. Plans continue to progress. And then Project Seahawk, they are a group that is looking to bring in some affordable multifamily into our market, which is much needed, of course, to support our growth. The site of interest has some infrastructure challenges. They've been working with city staff to try to ameliorate those challenges. So we're continuing to have great dialogue with them. Project Bright, we had a site visit recently at the location of interest in East Caldwell for an industrial site. LPC West was with us on one of the sites, one of the visits. Plans continue to progress forward, so it's good deal there. Project Spot, this is a big box retailer, may have identified another parcel for their development. I've talked about them in the past, but this group is continuing to have an appetite to locate in Caldwell. With our needs for commercial and retail here being the way they are, it's really exciting to see a group like this have an interest in Caldwell. Linden Industrial, that was recently leased. It wasn't on the market terribly long, a few months or so. That building leased to a Boise-based logistics company not too long ago. And then Project Play, this is an active lifestyle concept. They're considering an industrial building in East Caldwell. The 20,000 square foot building seems to be a good fit for their use, and they continue to have an interest in that space. And then Amphitheater RFP, we extended the due date from end of November to January 15th, just a heads up on that. Project Black, this is a national drink company. They are looking to locate in East Caldwell. They believe they found a site to do a potential build-to-suit project. Project Family, this is an entertainment operator. They're interested in North Caldwell. It should be on the North Caldwell list, I apologize. They've engaged with some investors to bring this project to fruition. And then Business Retention Expansion, this is more of a heads up as to our department, some of the things that we do with the activities that we do in economic development. We've met with a few companies. The most recent were Fresca and Capital Distributing. Essentially, these are wellness checks just to ensure that they have what they need to operate here successfully. And we connected them with various groups in our community to make sure that, of course, their business platform is solid and they have all the resources they need to be successful here. North Caldwell, shifting gears, project or District 26. This is the next property to annex into the city. that's contiguous with city property currently in the county. They will have their neighborhood meeting that is congruent with the annexation process on December 28th. They're going to move forward with annexation obligations. This is a great step into the equation. So we're excited to see plans progress on that. And then just going down here, Project Ag, this is a food processor. They're interested in our area as well in Northwest Caldwell. They have a need for 10 to 15 acres for a new facility. They have a couple sites that they're considering out that way. So I'm optimistic, given the interest that we've received of late, that we'll see some development out there in the near future. So I'm excited about 2024 and what it's going to bring. And then downtown, lastly here, well, second to last, we're solidifying plans, as many of you probably recognize, with the car park to bring parking downtown. So they'll manage our parking services. I'll keep you all updated on how that progresses. We're starting to do some shipments there. Could be mid-February until we see that full launch, but the timeline is a little bit elusive, but I'll keep you all posted on when we target that initial launch. Tillion, they're open. Residents are moving in. A lease has been signed for food and beverage concept on the first floor, starting to get some commercial interest. Of course, they have residents moving into the actual facility itself, so it's good to see some life taking form in that building. And then Project Richard, we solidified the E&A, which is an exclusive negotiation agreement with Obie Companies for a new boutique hotel in downtown Caldwell. Excited to see that small step in the process progress. Additional updates, I frequent the TOK commercial report. I just want to share a couple of things for you all for your consideration. As you probably witnessed or recognized or have heard or have read, sales are down. It was quite the seller's market. The prices were very high. Most listings were going for above asking price. Now we're seeing a lot more price reductions. So it's starting to shift from a seller's market to a buyer's market a little bit there. So of these things that have been denotated here below the first paragraph, really the main takeaway is that retail has remained strong. That's been exciting to see. It's been consistent here in Caldwell as well. A lot of interest still downtown, and Ophelia will share her report, but that's been positive. But even outside of downtown and North Ranch and other areas of Caldwell, we're seeing some strong interest from the retail front. And then the final thing I have to report is based on what Destination Caldwell has shared. They're working with a group named Placer AI, and what they do is they look at cell phone data to identify who is on the plaza or different areas of your community. They chose to focus on our Winter Wonderland event. So November 17th through the 19th, we had 34,000 visitors according to the cell phone data that was retrieved. This is a 5% gain from 2022. It gives a brief breakdown of the days there. Our busiest day, of course, was on Saturday, 12.64 thousand visits, which is amazing. Average stay was about 81 minutes, and it also recorded where folks would go after they would leave downtown. So we got a good sense of the businesses that they were frequenting, not just on Indian Creek Plaza, but outside the bounds of our plaza in downtown. So really remarkable data to look at. I would estimate that we had, if I were physically there, I wouldn't say that we had 34,000. It's really neat to see that data presented in the fashion that it was. So with that, that's all I have, unless there are any questions for me.
Questions for Stephen?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick?
tell me about the amphitheater RFP. I must have missed something.
So this one is a consideration that we had a couple groups of it that were interested in bringing this product to our community, and this RFP was disseminated. I want to say it was October when it was shared, and the due date was essentially shifted to reflect January 15th. I know there was a desire from staff to get through the holiday period before we made a final, analysis on that to share to City Council.
I think council approved the RFP.
Okay.
It's not in that urban
Yeah.
renewal.
This was in just giving clarification, the property of interest was in the former urban renewal district, and it was on this list as a result of that.
Got it, okay. And number two, people in the east part of Caldwell ask me they ask me this question more than any other. When are they gonna see a grocery store? Can I give them any hope?
Julie and I are on track here. Check off two.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that question. I do receive that question quite a bit as well. We do have an operator that is there, right? We have one that has found a site that is moving forward with plans. as time progresses, they'll be able to make that announcement. But I'm excited to say that there's been strong interest, and we have an operator that has solidified a location of interest. So, it is much needed here in the community, specifically in that region. So I'll be pleased to make that announcement formally.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for
Just one comment.
Mr. Jody?
I'm excited to see what the Tillian Hotel is gonna look like coming up here before 2024. So whenever they provide those plans, I'd like to see what that's gonna look like.
We could end up with 2 hotels downtown.
We could, and I expect that to happen.
I'll keep you all updated on the information I hear from that front. So thank you very much.
I'm expecting a hotel there in 2024.
And Mr. Doty, the council has not seen the RFP for the
Where did
amphitheater.
we talk about it at then?
I don't know. I have talked with other council members and none of us have seen it.
Yeah.
We approved it somewhere, I think.
I don't know.
I'll make sure to share that out so you all have it in front of you.
Very good. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
The entire commission wants to give you our congratulations on the new little one. Steve, you look a little tired, man.
Wasn't going to speak to that, but yes, indeed, I am tired, and I have my eldest son here. He's a 5th grader, and the way I'm having kids now, I just have kids with me all the time, so just get used to that. So
very good. Ophelia, we'll welcome you and your child. Oh, you're coming on, huh?
No, and today she's at home.
Okay.
But thank you for asking. I'm going to make this kind of short and quick. So, update on Project Educate. We've actually found a space for them. They're going to be on the plaza. They are signing their lease this week, and they hope to be open in April or March of this upcoming year. So, we'll make an announcement later this week on our economic development page as to who they are. So, follow us for that update. Project G, seeking office in downtown space. They've also found a couple of options that are available to them and continue to look for additional options. And we'll move on to new projects. Project Door. These folks have identified a downtown location as well. Project 2, retail business that's seeking to open a new business concept in our downtown. So again, working with those individuals. Project 3, downtown business seeking new space. I'm kind of running out of project names here, as you can see. Project Cross is seeking a new location outside of the downtown, and they are currently vacating their current space that they actually own. Project Extreme, service provider seeking downtown space, identified a couple of the spaces. Unfortunately, the leasing owner is uninterested in providing them that space. And then just a couple of updates on vacancies. Recent vacancies, we have the Nines Denim and Vinyl vacate their location. There's been a lot of interest in that space. Just today, I walked a business that visited us from another state nearby, and they are doing their homework. Their agent had taken them to the Boise Market, walked their downtown, went to Eagle, Meridian, and this is where they want to be. They said this town reminds them of a Hallmark type of town. So they are looking to relocate completely their community where they're at another state. So they're taking their time to make that decision, and I'll provide additional details in my next month's update. But they are looking to up and leave their state and move to Caldwell. So that was exciting. And just to give you a report on another economic driver that we have in our community is Caldwell Fine Arts. And recently, they also had a sold-out event here in Caldwell. They sold 2,182 tickets for the Nutcracker recently, and I do sit on their board, and we do get data in terms of where are the visitors coming from, and so we do get quite a bit of visitors from other communities, and the director's actually on her way here back from her much-needed vacation, so I'll provide additional data on where those visitors were coming from. But this year, they partnered up with Ballet Idaho's, who they hire, which is locally here, and our board chair, we met this Friday to do a debriefing, and he said that we're so happy to be working with that organization simply because it also brings other local people into Caldwell, people from communities such as Eagle that otherwise would have gone to the Ann Morrison Center are now visiting us. So great numbers there, sold out shows all 3 nights. For the Tea Party, it looks like they had 1,100 tickets that were sold for Clara's Tea Party, which is part of the Nutcracker. And one of the things that Caldwell Fine Arts is, what they do is they give back to our community as well in form of free performance to the students. So they were able to perform in front of 815 students. So another, again, if you haven't attended a Caldwell Fine Arts performance, I'd be happy to provide you all tickets to the next performance. So follow us on social media as well. And I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Ophelia? Mr. Doty?
Do you know what the next one is, Ophelia?
The next one is, oh goodness.
Just to give them a shout out.
Let's see, that's a good question. I
didn't mean to
don't
put you
have
on
that.
the
No,
spot.
that's okay. I can go ahead and send that over to you or reshare it on Facebook here shortly.
Sure,
When I
that
send
would be
it to you.
great.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Actually, can I make one more comment just to the Tillian project since Chairman Doty had a question about Tillian? I actually visited Tillian, I think they opened December 1st, and just wanted to share this with you all. I met with the leasing agents, Brenda and Lupe, who gave me another tour. Some of their tenants are actually have moved in here from Indiana, Colorado, and Washington, which was really surprising to me. And I said to these folks, relocate to Caldwell and then we're looking for space, and they directly just moved from those states to the Caldwell area. And one of the things that Tillian is doing is they're actually partnering up with Bond and Bevel to provide free coffee for their residents. So it's nice to see that partnership in our local downtown, and our businesses have reported positive feedback in terms of the residents patronizing them. So it's exciting to hear that those individuals, those residents, are visiting our retail shops.
Question.
Mr. Allgood?
I see on the bottom of your list, you have downtown vacancies update.
Yes.
And specifically Tacos Colima, are they just moving to their other site, or is there a project going in there?
No, so Tacos Colima, I apologize for not reporting on that one. Tacos Colima, where they currently are situated here, behind the Arthur project, they are actually just working out of their taco truck, so they're using that more as their kitchen. So we've had a lot of inquiries in terms of, is that space available? Just again, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, unfortunately that space is not available. They're using that as their prep kitchen, their kitchen for their food trucks.
So the owner of that property is not Tacos Colima?
No, the owner of that property is Glenn Koch. He owns several properties throughout our Caldwell community.
Going to do something else with it, do you know?
No, not at this moment. He's very loyal to all his tenants, and so as long as his tenants continue to use that space and pay rent, he'll keep them there.
Oh, I thought they have a space over on Painter.
Yes,
And I thought they were moving over there.
No, what happened was, Dennis Dillon, I believe, they purchased, the location off of Middleton and the Boulevard. There was a older building right across I think there's all those Betos over in that area. And so that's where they stationed one of their food trucks. And so they purchased that space, demolished that building, and now are using it as a dealership. So they had to relocate one of their food trucks, and so they relocated to Caldwell.
So what do you mean by Tacos Colima as a vacancy, a downtown vacancy?
I'm sorry, and I apologize for that miss right up there. So they're vacant in terms of they're not open to the community. The restaurant is no longer open to the community. So it was a sit-down restaurant at one point right here, right next to the oil changers. So you were able to go in there and purchase your meal and sit down. You're no longer able to do that. So now it's just used for a kitchen for the food trucks.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Ophelia. Yep. Brings us to our attorney reports. Mr. Hilty?
Should be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an update for you tonight on the property tax interest and penalties.
County Commissioners out here.
This is, yeah.
I had a conversation with the attorney for the county, Zach Wesley, a couple of weeks ago. after pinging him several times. And I probably don't want to share too much of my speculation, but had indicated that, look, I've given you my analysis of this, and if I'm wrong, you can point out why. And he didn't want to do that, hasn't done that, but did indicate that this request to include a proportionate share of the penalties and interest in increment is very controversial at the county, in Canyon County, and that he's not in position to go ahead and do this, and is not sure that a further meeting at this point is necessarily going to be helpful. But he wasn't saying I was wrong, and he wasn't saying no. What came of it was, and this I think this is true, that there is a broader issue regarding the way in which counties across the state handle this interest and penalties. And it came to a head in Kootenai County in North Idaho, and we've probably talked about this before, where they just stopped paying that to all taxing districts. Now remember, an urban renewal agency is not a taxing district. Taxing districts are cities and school districts and highway districts and those that actually levy taxes. That wound up in litigation in fairly short order. There was a combination of highway districts and cities. I think there may have been a school district in there that sued the county. They were successful. That decision was appealed in November to the Supreme Court. And so now pending before the Supreme Court is this issue as to whether it's appropriate for counties to withhold the penalties and interest. And he meaning Mr. Wesley, the county attorney, has certain of his elected officials who are saying we really shouldn't do anything until that case is resolved. I pointed out to him that I understood, and I understand, and that does make some sense, and I told him I thought that. The problem is there's not an urban renewal district among the plaintiffs, and if you look at my analysis on this, it very heavily weighs on not as much the tax code, okay, which is what the counties and the cities are fighting over. It has to do with the Economic Development Act, and that is how tax increment is defined, and that's, of course, an animal that is unique to urban renewal areas. And my analysis really, it talks about the definition of tax increment, and it says you take all of the taxes that are generated within an urban renewal area, and then you take some things out. The most significant thing you take out is the base assessment roll. The original level of taxes being paid when the urban agency was created. And then there are some additional things that could be taken out, and then it says everything else is increment. And so I'm saying within the definition of everything else is included a proportionate share of penalties and interest because those aren't taken out anywhere. And I said, that's not necessarily going to be resolved by this case before the Supreme Court. And so are we just kicking the can down the road, which is perhaps part of the situation. But I do think there might be something that we learn on the tax side, because part of the issue that I have to concede is what is a property tax, because tax increment has its base in property tax. Now, I've gone through the tax code, and I think I pointed out the same things that the cities have been pointing out in this litigation, that it's sort of all property tax. If it's a penalty for late payment, if it's interest on a late payment, it's still supposed to be handled as property tax, even if you could say it's a little bit different than just the underlying levy assessment. Well, that question is likely to be addressed by the Supreme Court at some level, and it does bear on our issue at some level. What the letter I received it this afternoon from the county, what they really are proposing is that we just maintain the status quo until we see what happens in this litigation. It also points out, and I think this is true, there will be a legislative effort, at least there's one by the cities and the taxing districts, to say, tell the counties to knock it off. There could be some countervailing effort by counties. I don't know, but it is likely to be a subject of discussion in the legislature this year. My thought, what they're asking is to just maintain the status quo. In discussing it on the phone, as we were kicking around what to do, Mr. Wesley said, we might just go ahead and set these funds aside in a separate account or something, and not spend them, so that once we get this determined, we could then, if necessary, settle up with the agency. And so I bring this to you because I need to know how to respond. And let me give you, I guess, my working advice, subject to whatever you think. If they continue to tell us no, then our alternative would be to file a lawsuit. That would probably be a declaratory judgment action, and it would be in some ways similar to what happened in Kootenai County. I wouldn't think that the judges would be anxious to take it up until a pending Supreme Court case that may bear on their decision is decided. So, I don't think there's a lot we can do from a practical standpoint in the next few months, which is what I would anticipate it will take to get a decision from the Supreme Court. Remember, too, that we're not talking about, at this point, anything that might be past due withholdings that would have been relevant to the East Urban Renewal area. We're really just talking about the North area. And so between the distinction between base assessment roll and current value is going to be small, and then further, the number of delinquencies is also going to be, we're probably not talking about a lot of dollars. And so I think it's reasonable to just say, look, we'll go ahead and wait until either we get a decision from the Supreme Court, or, and I just throw this out as a reasonable time frame, September 1st of 2024, meaning that if we don't have a decision by the Supreme Court within that time frame, we can figure out how to move forward. We're not going to wait forever, but we will wait for a reasonable time. Provided that the county go ahead and account for these things and just tell us what you're holding. And then I don't know that it's, given the number of dollars, I don't know how important it is to have it sequestered into a separate account, but as long as, we're tracking the amount, and that we're not waiving any claims to those funds, then we'll go ahead and just kind of wait and see how this develops. That's my thought on it. It's sort of like the proposal from the county. He does not in the letter mention holding aside the funds, although he did talk to me about that on the phone. But he's dealing with some folks who have pretty strong opinions about urban renewal generally, and this is one avenue in which they're expressing those opinions. I think is, again, sort of my speculation about the dynamic over there. I can certainly, I don't think we have to have a decision tonight. If you want to read the letter, I can get it delivered to you tomorrow. We can take it up at the next meeting. You can tell me how you want me to respond tonight, but that's the update on that one.
Okay. Mr. Doty.
How'd you know I wanted to talk on that?
And I can read your attitude.
Mr. Chair, first I won't agree to 2024, September of 2024. I think the Supreme Court will have a decision within 90 days. I think the legislature's usually done in March or April of 2024. And so I think either once the Supreme Court has rendered its decision or the legislature has concluded for their season, I think that's when we bring it up. I think it's time to hold them. They won't give you an answer on paper. You've given your argument. It's time to take an administrative action to get at least for a judge to say, what is your argument against this? I get your concern with the Supreme Court, because even a local judge could hold it until that ruling is in place. So I'm not opposed to waiting till the Supreme Court rules, though it sounds like it's apples and oranges. We could still have an argument even if the Supreme Court decides no against whatever Kootenai County has going on. But I'm certainly not willing to just wait till September of 2024. We've already waited this long. They won't give you an answer in writing. So my suggestion would be, once the Supreme Court has ruled, or at the conclusion of the legislative session which is in 2024, but they're talking about the 2025 budget. But I'll just say the calendar year of, once the legislature is concluded in the year of 2024 is what would be my proposal.
Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, it's just me and Mr. Doty seem to be controlling the floor tonight. So, one of the things I've struggled with and having connection to the legislature is considering running. First of all, the legislature is not really a fan of urban renewal, and they're not jumping on any opportunity to make any changes in our favor. But as far as I'm aware, the county has never, I'm not really excited about saying, okay, the clock starts now. The county has never told us how much they've collected over the past 10 years, 5 years, is that correct?
Yes.
So we don't, by waiving that, we have no idea how much money we're waiving, you know, from 5 years ago.
There's even arguments on how long it should go back.
Correct,
right?
yes, and we don't know whether that's $100,000 or $1 million. We don't really have any idea what that, to say we waive that is could be very generous on our part. And so I'm struggling with, and speaking of the legislature, I feel like even the barest of a bill should say that they have to notify urban renewal agencies on how much they collected in those sums, interest and fees. I mean, if they don't give them to us, it'd be nice to know what that dollar amount is. Again, it would certainly help make a decision as to whether we're going to just say we start today. Has there been any discussion? Are you aware of anything coming forward regarding that particular piece?
In the legislature?
Yes.
Yeah, I know that there was a bill run last year.
Yeah, and that went nowhere.
Yeah, and it's the same. I think it's the same bill, or it's coming from the same group. So it may not get anywhere this year. But I think, Raylan, we talked about that, didn't we?
So it's Senator, or it's run by the same Senator Schroeder, I believe it is his name.
Okay.
And he's a city council person as well, in Pocatello, I believe.
Oh, no, that's Representative Rick Cheatham.
And so, but it is specifically for taxing districts, and it does not include urban renewal, but it was presented through AIC that they were presenting that, so.
Yeah, it never got out of committee.
So.
Yeah, I don't.
So, anyway, again, it seems like other parties are really interested in us. I agree with Commissioner Doty, and us kicking the can down the road on, them saying that they'll put this money in an account, in case they have to pay is good, but, again, I'm really concerned on how much money we're waiving to get them to agree to pay us now. I would really love to have some idea how much money that is.
Yeah, let me just, for clarification, the difficulty that we have with collecting the past due funds is, what do we do with them, right? Because those are past due funds for the Caldwell East area. All right, now there would be some past due for the North area, but just over the last year.
2 years.
Right, 2 years. And so that we're tracking, certainly. And that we would not be waiving that.
Right.
But I don't think it amounts to a whole lot. It was probably a large number if you looked at what happened between 1998, when the East area was formed, and 2020, when it sunset. But the problem is now, if you receive that money, you probably just have to turn around and give it back to the individual taxing districts, which is, maybe helpful for them. But the point is, we don't have now an East area that can receive tax increment and do projects with it. We're just having to finish out the ones that we have with the current revenue that's in the bank. So, and then you've got, of course, the statute of limitations issue. So we had decided, and I don't know if it was formally decided with the board, I think we had discussed it at some of the previous meetings, that pursuing those past due funds would be complicated. Although it is probably a sizable number if you look at 25 years. If you look at,
Well, the past 10 years were the big dollar
yeah,
amount.
that's right. And so but it presented a very heavy lift. And I think at some point, my impression was that it was decided that we would be looking prospectively at the north area and try to get resolved for that purpose. And that I think, Commissioner Brooks was brought to the table with sort of that in mind as well. That look, if you're not suing us for hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's not enough to fight over going forward.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
just to add comments to that. That's why I want resolution is what do we do going forward? Because we don't have an answer. If they don't want to pay now, they're not going to want to pay in the future. Whether we win or lose, at least we'll have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I'm not so concerned with what do we do with the money if it comes back. We'll figure that out legally as to what we do with it. But if it's Caldwell taxpayer money, that's who I fight for. I don't fight for county taxpayer money. I fight for the citizens of Caldwell. So it does not concern me one bit of what do we do with it once we get it. I don't even think we should be looking at that as a decision maker. All of a sudden we don't know what to do with it. We will figure that out by the legal means of you and your team. The key is to get the taxpayer money. If the taxpayers of Caldwell are owed that money, that's who I fight for. And so that's whether we get a yes or no from the court, at least we will know. But we don't want another 20-year urban renewal, and we still don't know, and the county still hasn't given us an answer. So, again, I'll just reiterate, I fight for the taxpayer of Caldwell. Not that I want to get in a big fight with the county, but that's not who I fight for, and that's not who I represent. So,
Any other questions? Mark, thanks for chasing this down. I know it's been over a year that you've been working at this without much light at the end of the tunnel, and I appreciate your dedication toward that and keeping us informed. So before we go to the next point, I'm going to ask Rob McDonald if he'd come up, if someone would wake him.
I was wondering why he was back there.
Yeah. I asked Rob to come because we have seen a little bit of activity there at the corner of Kimball and Blaine, where the Cooper project is going to be. Can you tell us what they've been up to over there, Rob?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to be here at your request to speak to this item. As you may be aware, that corner where the Norman's Jeweler was located had stalled out for a little while after the excavation and deconstruction of the building. The contractor hit some pretty difficult material to work through down deep, and they were in groundwater, and so there was a lot of question on ground stability. And so after some work and after some additional geotech work, TJ Fran's engineering staff worked with the property owner who's proposing to develop on that site to make sure that whatever we ended up with at the after we were completed, they were going to be able to use and build on. And so we've got to the point where the situation's been remedied. It's been filled. It's been done in lifts, and we have geotech reports for all the material that's been brought in there. At this point, the information has been passed over to the developer, and we have basically handed the site back over to them now, where they can start anytime. And at this point, we have not heard any additional questions or concerns on their part.
Yeah.
And so if they have any concerns, they would raise that to us, and then we'd be able to mitigate those. But I think we're basically done with what we had promised to do over there.
Were there any environmental concerns on that spot?
No, not to my knowledge. It was more just difficulty of working in groundwater and compaction. There were some concerns about their basement stem walls being pretty deep in the ground, and removing those completely would have compromised the alley and a lot of the utilities that we have up adjacent to the alley and the street. And so they ended up working out a situation where we left some of those down in the ground, but they were cut off pretty low so that they won't impact the new building, but they didn't have to be fully removed to ease the project a little bit.
Great. Any questions for Rob? All right.
Maybe one, not necessarily for you, because you may not know, but maybe Raylene, did we stay within budget for the remediation on that site that we had intended?
My recollection is yes, but Raylene is the final word on that.
So that's the Norman complex, right? The 213?
Yes.
Yeah.
So based off the project list, yes, we did. So we still actually have 23,000. I'm assuming we might have one more billing that we'll have to go through in January, but, and I'll have to see what has been paid, but we'll probably hit pretty close to that project budget.
Thank you.
Rob, thanks for being here.
Yep, thank you.
Okay. And back to you, Mr. Hilty.
I did send an email out today on this to the developer and the developer's attorney, just indicating that we need to get a scheduled performance updated, so we have some hard deadlines, and I'll keep you posted on how that comes out. We've talked about TS development. They, just so that you're aware, the email that came from their attorney was, we want to submit our evidence of financing. Can we do that to my office? They're concerned about it becoming a public document or being presented publicly because of the content of it. I told them I think we could do that. That's what the DDA indicates, is that they would need to submit something that was satisfactory to me. My thought is I would reach out individually to you and Commissioner Moore, Mr. Chairman, and let you know what I've got, have him take a look, and we can decide whether or not that's sufficient. Let's see. I wrote a letter to DeChase, to the TS, regarding the Tillian project. I think we had talked about that. The concern that I have is we're a little unsure what's going to happen with phase 2.
Hotel.
Well, bear with me.
Okay.
The concern that I have, just generally, is that it's not headed towards a hotel, and that staff is going to get drawn into conversations about what alternatives exist there in a way that makes staff jointly responsible for finding a solution to, what does it look like there for DeChase to develop, not a hotel. And I want to make sure that we keep this line fairly bright, that right now it's a hotel. That's what the contract provides. And if they want to build a hotel there, we'll obviously help them, to the extent that staff can. If there's going to be an alternative, and I left the door open to that, there could be an alternative that is acceptable to everybody, but that's going to have to be something that they present to us. And they've not wanted to talk about phase 2. They've not wanted to talk about the disposition of that site. They last communication from November was, let's talk about it after the first of the year. And I think the letter was primarily intended to say, you can talk to us whenever you want to. We'll act in good faith. Until there's a contractual change, you have to build a hotel on the timeline that you said you'd build it. And so left the door open to meetings if they wanted meetings and so forth. But, I just don't want us to be sitting here a year from now with DeChase saying, well, gosh, we've been talking about, a restaurant and, for months, and, staff said that they'd get us this information and that information, and all of a sudden it's kind of a joint responsibility for not getting done what's in the contract. So anyway, that letter has gone out. If you'd like to see it, just email me or let me know. Amano, I emailed the attorney for Amano today just to make sure we're still on the same track. That's a March 1st closing. It's a March 1st commencement of construction. And just want to let you know that I'm keeping an eye on the revised schedule of performance and making sure that we're getting everything done there that we need to do. I think we talked about the new area, so I think that concludes my report, unless there are questions for me about any of this or anything else.
Any questions for Mark? Nope. Very good. Thank you, Mark. Takes us to item 4 on our agenda. Any commissioner reports this evening?
We've mentioned this many times, but Friday evening, the wife and I were going out to dinner. We went by exit 28, and the cars were lined up all the way up the exit onto the freeway coming down. Coming into Caldwell Friday night from east of us. It's pretty cool.
Or not, if you're trying to get through there.
Yeah, it was pretty tough to get to dinner.
Right.
Very Hallmark-like, right?
I avoid that, oh, yeah.
More like Bad Magazine.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Warwick?
I don't really have a report. I just kind of have a statement to make, and I kind of want it to get out there amongst the community because there's been a lot of misunderstanding. Caldwell, I run the Caldwell Meals on Wheels program. The hospital, West Valley, has always provided our meals. As of January 1st, they informed us they will no longer be providing our meals. We have contracted with a new vendor. That new vendor is Metro Community Services. I've heard people in the community say, so I understand Metro Meals on Wheels is taking over Caldwell Meals on Wheels. That's not the case. And if you hear anybody say that, have them give me a call and I'll tell them exactly what's going on. I'm simply getting a new vendor to buy my meals from. And I want that to be very clear, because if it's not, it's going to impact the community support of this program, and that can't happen. There's too many people that depend on it.
Very good. Thank you, Julie. I have nothing to report tonight, so do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Good meeting.